I'm a 30-year-old woman, the middle child in a family of 3 siblings. My older sister Amanda, 33, has been the family's pride and joy for as long as I can remember. She's the golden child, the one who ticks all the boxes of what my mom considers success. Amanda's a corporate lawyer married to a doctor, with 2 perfect kids and a picture-perfect suburban life. Meanwhile, I've spent my life as the background character in her highlight reel. Growing up, it wasn't subtle. Every family dinner turned into a recap of Amanda's latest achievement. She aced her law school exams. Mom hosted a dinner to celebrate. She landed a job at a top firm. There was champagne. Bought a house? Mom couldn't stop gushing. Meanwhile, when I graduated with honors, Mom's reaction was, "Oh, that's nice, dear. So, what's Amanda up to these days?" It's not that I'm unsuccessful. I have a steady career, my own place, and I've been financially independent since my early 20s. But none of that seems to count in my mom's book. She's laser-focused on Amanda's accomplishments and treats me like an afterthought. It's like being in a play where Amanda's the lead, and I'm stuck as tree number 2 in the background. My younger brother, Eric, is 19 and in college. He's still figuring things out, but he's constantly under pressure to measure up to Amanda. Mom's always making helpful suggestions about what Eric could do to be more like your sister. It's exhausting for him and adds another layer of tension to our already strained family dynamics. Last Sunday, we had one of our regular family dinners. These gatherings are less about connecting and more about Amanda Appreciation Day. As usual, Mom was beaming with pride as she announced Amanda's latest triumph. She's up for a promotion at her law firm. It wasn't even confirmed yet, but you'd think she'd won a Nobel Prize with how much Mom was hyping it up. I sat there, trying to focus on my food while Mom went on about how Amanda's promotion was so well-deserved and how she's always been destined for greatness. Eric looked equally miserable, poking at his mashed potatoes. Then, as if to twist the knife, Mom turned to me and asked if there was anything new in my life. Before I could answer, she added, "But nothing as exciting as Amanda's news, I'm sure." Something inside me snapped. I set down my fork and, with a forced smile, said, "Amanda really is the family's favorite project, isn't she?" The room went silent. Amanda raised an eyebrow, clearly enjoying the moment. Mom, without missing a beat, replied, "Well, Amanda gives us plenty to brag about." That stung. But instead of arguing, I just smiled and nodded. I decided then and there that I was done being the overlooked middle child. It was time to shake things up. I didn't say anything at the table, but I knew I needed to make my own headlines at the next family event. That's when I thought about Leah. We've been dating for about a year, but I hadn't introduced her to my family yet. Not because I was hiding her, but because I wasn't sure how she'd fit into the Amanda-centric narrative my mom had crafted. Leah's incredible, she's smart, accomplished, and has a way of lighting up any room she walks into. If anyone could make an impression, it was her. Later that night, I told Leah about the dinner and my family dynamics. She listened carefully, then smiled and said, "Sounds like fun. Let's give them something to talk about." She didn't elaborate, but I could tell she was already planning something. The following day, I called Mom and casually mentioned I'd be bringing someone special to Amanda's promotion celebration dinner. Her response was lukewarm at best. She asked a few questions about Leah, her job, her background, but it was clear she wasn't expecting much. Amanda, on the other hand, had her own commentary when she heard the news. She teased me about finally having a date that isn't imaginary. Classic Amanda. I wasn't going to let their reactions get to me. For the first time, I felt like I had a card to play. Leah wasn't just someone I loved, she was a force to be reckoned with. She mentioned she had a few surprises up her sleeve for the dinner, but she wouldn't tell me what they were. "Trust me," she said with a wink. With the dinner date set, I started preparing. I wasn't sure how the night would go, but one thing was certain. This time, Amanda wasn't going to be the only star in the room. Update 1. The day of Amanda's promotion celebration dinner finally arrived. Leah and I got to the restaurant right on time, and as soon as we walked in, heads turned. Leah looked stunning in a simple yet elegant dress, her confidence radiating with every step. I could already tell she was going to make an impression. The family was seated at a long table in the private dining area. Mom was perched at the head, practically glowing as she sat next to Amanda, who looked like she'd just stepped out of a designer catalog. Eric was slouched in his seat, scrolling on his phone, clearly not thrilled about being there. Amanda's husband, Dan, was chatting with Mom, playing the role of the perfect son-in-law. When Leah and I approached the table, the conversation stopped. Amanda's eyes widened slightly, and I caught a flicker of surprise before she regained her composure. Mom's expression was harder to read. She gave Leah a once-over and then greeted us, polite but distant. Leah introduced herself with a warm smile, immediately putting everyone at ease. Even Eric perked up, asking her about the book she had tucked under her arm. Mom, however, went straight to business, asking Leah what she did for a living. Without missing a beat, Leah explained that she ran a non-profit organization focused on community development, particularly in underprivileged areas. She mentioned how her team had recently raised millions to build schools and healthcare facilities. Dan, who rarely engaged with anyone besides Amanda, leaned forward, visibly impressed. He started asking her about the projects, clearly interested in the logistics and scope of her work. Amanda, on the other hand, was not pleased. She interrupted by reminding everyone of the reason we were there, her upcoming promotion. Mom immediately picked up on the cue and redirected the conversation back to Amanda, talking about her hard work and dedication. Leah didn't seem fazed, she just listened politely and smiled. As the appetizers arrived, Leah surprised everyone by pulling out a beautifully crafted scrapbook. She handed it to Mom, explaining that it was a collection of photos and stories from the charity's recent projects, many of which aligned with causes Mom had supported in the past. Mom flipped through the pages, her face softening. For the first time that night, she seemed genuinely engaged. Amanda, however, was not about to let Leah win over Mom so easily. She made a comment about people who use charity work as a way to show off. Leah, still smiling, responded gracefully, emphasizing the importance of collaboration and shared goals. Eric jumped in, saying it was refreshing to have someone new at the table with interesting things to talk about. He even teased Amanda about monopolizing every conversation, earning a chuckle from Leah and a glare from Amanda. Then came the unexpected twist. There was a grand piano tucked into the corner of the room, and when Eric found out Leah could play, he challenged her to perform. Leah hesitated for a moment but eventually agreed. She walked over to the piano and began to play. The room fell silent as her fingers danced across the keys. By the time she finished, the other diners in the restaurant were clapping. Amanda looked like she'd bitten into a lemon. She quickly mentioned how hard it was to juggle her grueling hours at the firm with her responsibilities at home. But instead of shifting the attention back to her, the conversation circled back to Leah when someone asked about her background in music. By the time the main course arrived, even Mom was asking Leah questions about her work, her hobbies, and her travels. Amanda, meanwhile, grew quieter and quieter. Then, out of nowhere, she let it slip that her promotion wasn't finalized yet. The table went silent for a moment before Leah, ever the diplomat, changed the subject, sparing Amanda further embarrassment. After dessert, Amanda abruptly announced that she wasn't feeling well and needed to leave. Dan tried to get her to stay, but she waved him off and walked out without another word. The rest of us stayed for a little while longer, and on the way home, Mom broke the silence in the car. She said, almost to herself, Leah is quite impressive. I didn't say anything, but I couldn't help but feel a quiet sense of pride. For once, it wasn't all about Amanda, and I wasn't just the background character. Leah had done more than just make an impression. She had shifted the family dynamic in ways I didn't think were possible. And this was just the beginning. Update 2. The week after the dinner, things got interesting. Leah and I were at my place, going over some plans for the weekend, when she casually mentioned she'd been invited to perform at an international music festival. She said it like it was no big deal, but the name of the festival was one I'd actually heard of, a prestigious event with top-tier musicians from all over the world. I couldn't believe she'd kept something so massive under wraps. When I asked why she hadn't brought it up earlier, she just shrugged and smiled, saying she didn't want to overshadow the family dinner. Classic Leah. Meanwhile, I couldn't shake the feeling that Amanda wasn't going to let the dinner incident slide. It wasn't like her to just back off when she felt threatened. Sure enough, Eric called me a few days later with some interesting intel. He'd overheard Amanda on the phone with Mom, floating the idea of hosting a charity gala at her house. Eric said she was hyping it up as a way to bring the family together while also giving back to the community. Translation, she was looking for a way to reclaim the spotlight. Not long after, Mom announced that we'd be having a family reunion and charity auction at Amanda's house. It didn't take a genius to figure out who was behind the idea. Amanda's house was the perfect venue, spacious, elegant, and designed to impress. Mom was already gushing about the guest list Amanda was pulling together, which apparently included some of her influential colleagues and clients. When I told Leah about the event, she didn't seem surprised. Instead, she got that mischievous glint in her eye and said she had a plan. I should have known by now not to doubt her, but I couldn't help feeling a bit nervous. Amanda was playing to win, and I wasn't sure how Leah intended to counter her. A week before the reunion, Leah revealed her strategy. She wanted to donate a painting for the auction. At first, I didn't even know she painted, let alone well enough to put something up for auction. But when she showed me the piece, I was floored. It was stunning, abstract yet deeply emotional, the kind of artwork that draws you in and makes you feel something. Leah planned to keep her identity as the artist a secret until the right moment, letting the painting speak for itself. When the day of the reunion arrived, Amanda's house was buzzing with activity. The living room had been transformed into a mini gallery for the auction items, complete with labels detailing the piece's origins. Leah's painting was there, listed as anonymous donor, and it already had a crowd of admirers. Amanda was in full hostess mode, greeting guests and making sure everyone knew she was the one who'd organized the event. She introduced me to a few of her colleagues, making subtle digs about how nice it must be for me to finally be part of something this grand. Leah, meanwhile, mingled effortlessly, charming guests and earning compliments on her grace and poise. Even Mom seemed more interested in Leah than in Amanda's carefully rehearsed speeches. When the auction began, Amanda's colleagues dominated the bidding. They were particularly interested in Leah's painting, which quickly became the most sought-after item of the night. The bids kept climbing, and by the time the gavel fell, it had sold for an eye-watering amount. Amanda looked smug, clearly assuming the painting's success reflected well on her event planning skills. Then came the big reveal. As the auctioneer thanked the anonymous donor, Leah stepped forward and casually mentioned that she was the artist. The room went silent for a moment before the applause started. People swarmed her, asking about her inspiration and complimenting her talent. Amanda, standing off to the side, looked like she was about to explode. Dinner that night was tense. Amanda barely touched her food, her frustration simmering just below the surface. Eventually, she couldn't hold it in any longer. She accused Leah of orchestrating the entire event to upstage her, claiming it was all a calculated move to steal the spotlight. What happened next shocked everyone. Mom, who had always been Amanda's biggest cheerleader, told her to calm down. She said the night wasn't about competition, but about celebrating talent and generosity. For the first time in my life, I heard Mom defend someone who wasn't Amanda. Leah handled the situation with her usual grace, deflecting the drama and steering the conversation back to the success of the auction. Amanda, clearly unable to regain control of the evening, excused herself and disappeared upstairs. On the drive home, Mom turned to me and said, "Leah really is something special." It wasn't just a passing comment, it felt like a shift, a moment of clarity where Mom finally saw me in a new light. For the first time in years, I felt like I was more than just Amanda's shadow. Leah had not only impressed my family but had also opened the door for me to finally step into the spotlight. And knowing Amanda, this was far from over. Update 3. The fallout from the charity gala was swift and dramatic. Amanda refused to speak to me or Leah for days. According to Eric, she'd been venting to Mom nonstop about how we'd hijacked her event and turned it into a spectacle. Amanda claimed Leah was trying to buy the family's approval, painting her as some kind of social climber. Mom tried to mediate, but Amanda wouldn't budge, doubling down on her narrative that Leah was out to replace her. It didn't stop there. Eric, ever the eyes and ears of the family, let me in on some gossip Amanda had been spreading among family friends. Apparently, she was telling people that Leah was manipulative and had deliberately orchestrated the painting reveal to humiliate her. Eric said some of the older relatives seemed to believe Amanda, but most were more interested in talking about how amazing Leah's painting was. Then came the unexpected twist. Amanda sent out invitations for a surprise family dinner at her house. She didn't give much detail, just said she had exciting news to share, and it was a night we wouldn't want to miss. The tone was all too familiar. It screamed attempted spotlight grab. Leah and I exchanged a knowing look when we got the invitation. If Amanda thought this dinner would overshadow everything else, she was in for a surprise. On the night of the dinner, Amanda was back in full control mode. The house was immaculate, the table set like something out of a lifestyle magazine. Amanda was glowing, clearly relishing the role of hostess. Mom seemed genuinely excited, Eric looked suspicious, and Leah was her usual composed self, observing everything without giving away much. As soon as everyone was seated, Amanda stood up, raising a glass to get our attention. She announced that she was pregnant with her third child. The room erupted into congratulations and cheers. Mom was over the moon, already brainstorming baby shower ideas. Eric leaned over and whispered to me, "Called it." Leah congratulated Amanda warmly, but the moment Amanda sat down, Leah mentioned her plans to perform at the International Festival. The timing wasn't deliberate, it was just how the conversation flowed, but it shifted the focus away from Amanda almost instantly. Mom, caught up in her excitement, made a comment that Amanda couldn't ignore. She mentioned how proud she was of Leah's upcoming performance and how it was the highlight of the year. Amanda's smile faltered, and her face turned red. She pushed her plate aside and excused herself from the table, muttering something about needing air. Eric followed her, and I could hear them arguing faintly from the other room. Amanda accused Leah of stealing her thunder and insisted that Mom was playing favorites. Eric, true to form, didn't hold back, calling Amanda's behavior childish. When they came back, Amanda looked furious, while Eric looked exasperated. Later that night, I overheard Amanda and Mom having a heated conversation in the kitchen. Amanda was demanding that Mom choose between supporting her or Leah. She accused Mom of betraying her by prioritizing Leah's accomplishments over her pregnancy announcement. Mom, sounding more tired than angry, told Amanda she wasn't choosing sides, she just wanted to celebrate everyone equally. Amanda stormed out, slamming the door behind her. After the dinner, Leah proposed hosting a small recital for the family before leaving for the festival. It was her way of bringing everyone together on neutral ground. Mom seemed thrilled by the idea, but Amanda wasn't about to let that happen without a fight. A few days later, Amanda announced plans to renew her wedding vows in a lavish ceremony, scheduled for the same weekend as Leah's recital. The timing wasn't a coincidence, and everyone knew it. Eric didn't hold back when we talked about it. He called Amanda out for being petty and said he was tired of her constant need to one-up everyone. He told me he planned to attend Leah's recital, even if it meant dealing with Amanda's wrath later. That was a big deal. Eric had always tried to stay neutral in family drama, but this time, he was firmly in our corner. When Mom found out about the scheduling conflict, she made her decision without hesitation. She told Amanda she'd be attending Leah's recital instead of the vow renewal. Amanda didn't take the news well. According to Eric, she accused Mom of turning the family against her and threatened to cut ties if Mom didn't change her mind. But Mom stood her ground, saying she couldn't keep enabling Amanda's behavior. As the weekend approached, I started to feel a strange sense of peace. For years, I'd been chasing Mom's approval, trying to prove I was more than just Amanda's shadow. But now I realized I didn't need it. I had Leah, Eric, and for the first time, a sense of my own worth. Amanda could keep playing her games, but I wasn't interested in competing anymore. That weekend, Leah's recital was a beautiful success. Amanda's absence was noticeable, but it didn't matter. The family that showed up was supportive, engaged, and genuinely happy to be there. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged. Update 4. The weekend of Amanda's vow renewal and Leah's recital finally arrived, and it was clear the family was divided. Some chose to attend Amanda's lavish ceremony, drawn by the promise of a high-profile event complete with catered meals and a string quartet. The rest, Mom included, decided to come to Leah's recital. It wasn't about picking sides, or at least that's what Mom insisted, but the decision felt like a statement nonetheless. Leah's recital was held at an intimate venue, a charming old theater with vintage decor. The audience was a mix of family, friends, and people from the local community who were there to support the performers. Leah was scheduled to play toward the end, which gave everyone time to settle in and chat before the music started. Eric, seated next to me, whispered that he couldn't wait to see Amanda's reaction when she found out Mom had skipped her ceremony. When Leah took the stage, she didn't just play, she captivated. Her performance was flawless, the kind that made you forget everything else for a while. The applause was thunderous, with people standing to cheer. Mom, sitting in the front row, looked genuinely proud, clapping harder than anyone else. Afterward, there were endless compliments from family members who had attended, praising Leah, not just for her talent, but for her grace and humility. Meanwhile, across town at Amanda's vow renewal, things weren't going as smoothly. According to Eric, who got the scoop later, Amanda had noticed Mom's absence almost immediately. She tried to brush it off, but during her toast, she couldn't resist making a passive-aggressive comment about certain family members prioritizing other commitments over her special day. The crowd, mostly Amanda's colleagues and friends, seemed uncomfortable, but Amanda didn't stop there. She called Mom out by name, saying it was disheartening to feel unsupported by her own mother. Mom, who had apparently been getting updates via text, responded mid-event. She sent Amanda a simple message, "You made your choice, I made mine." Word of Amanda's outburst spread quickly among the extended family, and by the next morning, everyone was talking about it. The The perfect daughter image Amanda had carefully curated started to crack, with people questioning her behavior. Some even reached out to Mom, expressing support and surprise at Amanda's public meltdown. When Amanda confronted me about the weekend, she was livid. She accused Leah of turning the family against her, claiming the recital's timing was deliberate. Leah, calm as always, didn't engage in the argument. Instead, she suggested they sit down and talk things out to mend the family dynamics. Amanda dismissed the offer outright, saying she didn't need Leah's help or interference. Later, Mom pulled me aside and admitted something that caught me off guard. She said she was beginning to see Amanda's manipulative tendencies for the first time. For years, she'd excused Amanda's behavior as ambition or pressure, but now it was clear there was more to it. She didn't say it outright, but it was obvious Mom was rethinking a lot of her past decisions and priorities. Eric added another layer to the story. He pointed out that Amanda had spent years trying to meet impossible expectations set by Mom, which likely fueled her competitive nature. While it didn't excuse her actions, it explained some of her insecurities. It was a perspective I hadn't considered before, and it made me feel a twinge of sympathy for Amanda, even if she wasn't making it easy to like her. Things went downhill for Amanda from there. Some of her colleagues who had attended the vow renewal started distancing themselves, citing her unprofessional behavior during the toast. Amanda, who thrived on her pristine image, was left scrambling to do damage control. From what I heard, she started withdrawing from social circles, avoiding calls, and shutting people out. Leah, on the other hand, continued to shine. Not long after the recital, she casually mentioned she'd been offered a spot on a prestigious board for her charity work. Mom was thrilled, and even some family members who hadn't been on Leah's side before started warming up to her. It was yet another win for Leah, and Amanda knew it. Then came Amanda's breaking point. She announced to the family that she was cutting ties with me and Leah, refusing to attend any future events where we were present. The declaration was dramatic, but no one seemed particularly shocked. By that point, the family had already started to split, with some siding with Amanda and others rallying around Leah and me. In the days that followed, the family felt like two separate factions. Amanda continued to isolate herself, while the rest of us began creating new traditions. Leah's presence became a central part of our gatherings, and for the first time in years, there was a sense of peace and unity, albeit without Amanda. Looking back, it felt like a turning point, not just for the family but for me as well. I'd spent so much of my life chasing Amanda's shadow, trying to prove I was worth noticing. But now, with Leah by my side and the support of those who mattered, I realized I didn't need Amanda's approval, or her drama, to feel complete. Update 5. Eric, being the eternal peacemaker, decided to host a family dinner. He claimed it was just a casual get-together, but everyone knew the real reason. He wanted to reconcile Amanda and me. Leah and I agreed to go, more out of support for Eric than any hope of resolution. Amanda's attendance was less surprising than her behavior when she arrived. From the moment Amanda walked in, it was clear she wasn't there to make amends. She gave Leah the cold shoulder, barely glanced in my direction, and spent most of the evening glued to her phone. The atmosphere was tense, with everyone trying to keep the conversation light, but the strain was obvious. It didn't take long for Amanda to unleash what had clearly been simmering for weeks. Midway through the meal, she slammed her glass down and accused Leah of stealing her family's attention and deliberately ruining her life. The room went silent. Eric tried to interject, but Amanda wouldn't let up, recounting every perceived slight since Leah entered the picture. Leah, who had stayed quiet through Amanda's previous outbursts, finally spoke up. She calmly listed all the times she had tried to include Amanda, to find common ground, and to show respect. Leah wasn't confrontational. She was matter-of-fact, recounting her efforts in a way that made it impossible to argue. Then Leah dropped the bombshell. She revealed that she and Amanda had crossed paths years before, at a charity event. Leah had been advocating for her nonprofit, and Amanda, representing her law firm, had dismissed Leah's work as lowbrow in front of a group of donors. Leah explained she hadn't brought it up before because she didn't want to hold a grudge, but Amanda's constant accusations had pushed her to speak out. The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Amanda froze, her face pale. Eric looked stunned, and even Mom seemed shaken. The rest of us were speechless as the story sank in. Amanda stammered something about not remembering the incident, but her reaction said otherwise. The room stayed quiet, the air heavy with disbelief. Mom broke the silence with something none of us expected. She apologized to me for the years of favoritism, admitting she had been blind to Amanda's behavior. She said she now saw how much pressure she had put on Amanda and how it had warped their relationship. It wasn't an easy thing for her to admit, but it was the first time she acknowledged how her actions had affected the family. Amanda's reaction was predictable. She stood up, accused us all of ganging up on her, and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Eric followed her, catching up with her at the driveway. Their voices were loud enough for us to hear snippets of the argument. Eric accused Amanda of being unable to handle anyone else's success, calling her out for her selfishness and insecurity. Amanda yelled back, blaming everyone else for her unhappiness before driving off. The rest of us stayed behind, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Some family members expressed sympathy for Amanda, saying she was under a lot of pressure. Others were clearly fed up, tired of her constant need to dominate every situation. Leah, true to form, stayed calm and suggested we focus on rebuilding our relationships without Amanda's interference. Later that night, Mom admitted to me that she regretted the dynamic she had created. She confessed she might have unintentionally set Amanda up to feel like she always had to be perfect, which only made her more competitive and resentful. It didn't excuse Amanda's actions, but it added a layer of understanding. Weeks passed with no word from Amanda. The family began to settle into a new normal, one that felt lighter and less fraught with tension. Our gatherings became more about connection and less about competition. Leah became an integral part of these moments, her warmth and presence helping to heal wounds I didn't even realize were there. For the first time, I felt a sense of peace. I wasn't competing with Amanda anymore. I was living my own life, surrounded by people who cared about me for who I was. Leah's influence on the family was undeniable, but it was more than that. I realized I didn't need Amanda's approval or validation to feel valued. In the end, the family created new traditions, ones that reflected our shared growth. Leah's recital became an annual event, something everyone looked forward to. Mom became more mindful of how she treated us, making an effort to celebrate everyone equally. Eric, ever the peacemaker, found his own voice in the process, refusing to let Amanda's absence define the family dynamic. Amanda stayed distant, her silence a constant reminder of the divide. But instead of dwelling on it, we focused on what we had gained. The drama might not be over, but for now the family was healing. And for the first time in years, I felt like I truly belonged.